The sound of a slap echoed across the market square. A young girl, no more than 16, stumbled backward, clutching a tattered notebook to her chest. Blood trickled from the corner of her lip. She had dared to ask why girls weren't allowed in the village school past primary 6. The crowd fell into a tense silence. Women froze at their stalls, eyes darting around. No one moved, no one spoke, only the sacred drum, tied high above the elder's shrine, thudded once as if in mourning. From the shadows of a palm frond hut, Adaora watched. She gripped the woven basket in her hands until her knuckles turned white. Her late husband had once sat among the very council that ordered girls into early marriage. Her silence had bought her safety. But at what cost? Beside her, an elderly woman eased. Don't look too long. You know what happened to Ngozi. Adaora didn't blink. Her heart pounded with the memory of Ngozi, a former market leader, dragged from her home at midnight for daring to question Chief Okonkwo. A small voice stirred beside Adaora. It was her daughter. Mama, will I go to school next year? She knelt, kissed the girl's forehead, and whispered, by next year, the world will change, even if I have to burn it myself. She stood, dropped her basket, and walked into the sun-drenched square. Her first step toward a revolution. 3 days later, whispers floated through the village like smoke. Did you hear? That widow, Adaora. She confronted Chief Okonkwo's guards. She stopped them from flogging the girl, said she would report them. Report to who? The same elders who made those rules? The village was buzzing, but Adaora kept her head down. She walked to the market every morning, with her little girl tied to her back, her eyes fixed forward, saying nothing, but listening to everything. That was how she noticed the stranger standing by the old mango tree near the school fence, Zinachi. She had returned, the rebellious teacher who had been suspended last year for starting a girls' reading club in secret. Zinachi's eyes met hers, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, like two dry sticks, recognizing the spark that could set them ablaze. That night, under the cover of rain, Adaora knocked on a quiet door in the abandoned cocoa storage house. Zinachi opened it. Inside were 6 women, some young, some old, sitting on wooden stools, faces lit by a kerosene lamp. No one said anything until Mama Uju, the herbalist, cleared her throat. She has arrived, the old woman said, smiling faintly. The third. Adaora looked around, confused. The third what? Mama Uju closed her eyes. The prophecy. When 3 women of fire meet, the gods will shiver, and the land will bleed out its secrets. Zinachi leaned in. We are building something, Adaora. Quietly, carefully. We are tired of losing daughters, tired of trading silence for survival. Adaora's voice shook as she replied, so am I. The door creaked as another woman slipped in, wrapped in a scarf, eyes darting like a hunted animal. It was Ngozi, alive, hiding. Her lips were split and her arm hung in a sling. I made the mistake of rising alone, she whispered. This time we rise together. The rain outside grew heavier. Inside, something stronger was rising. Courage, and from that night, the sisterhood began. They moved like shadows, whispering truths into the market, slipping leaflets into baskets, gathering widows, tailors, and teenage girls who still dreamed beyond the village walls. They were careful until one of them made a mistake, and the whole village would soon know what they were up to. 2 weeks into the sisterhood's quiet rebellion, things began to shift. Market prices dropped mysteriously for women who supported the movement. More girls started gathering after dusk near Zinachi's hut, reading books by candlelight. The chief's guards began patrolling more frequently, their eyes colder than usual. But the sisterhood had grown bold, too bold. One evening, Zinachi snuck into the council's archive house, hidden behind a shrine, to retrieve old education records. She believed they contained proof that funds meant for the girls' school were diverted by Chief Okonkwo. She found them, dusty ledgers, tucked beneath boxes of outdated laws. But she wasn't alone. A soft creak behind her made her freeze. Footsteps. Panicked, she tucked the papers under her wrapper and bolted out the back. She didn't see the pair of eyes that watched her from behind the curtain. Ngozi. The next day, the market was unusually quiet. Adaora noticed too many unfamiliar faces, men in plain clothes, pretending to shop. She tugged her daughter close and quickened her steps. Later that night, the safe house was raided, papers scattered, stools overturned, the kerosene lamp shattered, but the women were gone, warned just minutes before by Ngozi. I overheard the chief, she told them, her face pale. He is planning to make an example out of someone. That night, they fled into the forest, but Zinachi was missing. They waited and waited. Then came the knock, slow, deliberate. Adaora opened the door, expecting Zinachi. Instead, it was one of the chief's guards, holding a bloody scarf. Her heart sank. It was Zinachi's. The next morning, Chief Okonkwo stood proudly in the village square, holding a torn notebook high in the air. This was found in the hands of a rebel, he roared. Let this be a warning. No woman shall rise above her station. He pointed to a covered cage beside him. Inside is one of the so-called sisterhood. Tomorrow at sunrise, she will be paraded and punished before the gods. Gasp rippled through the crowd. Adaora trembled as her eyes locked on the cage. It wasn't Zinachi inside, it was Mama Uju. That night, Ngozi arrived at the hideout alone. Her voice broke. I told the chief about Zinachi. I thought if I gave him one name, he would stop. Adaora backed away slowly. You betrayed us? I didn't know you would take Mama Uju. I was trying to protect my daughter. They threatened to sell her off. Their hair was heavy, their silence louder than thunder. Then Adaora whispered, You gave them a fire. Now we will burn the whole house down. Her eyes gleamed with a plan. That night, Adaora lit a fire, not in the earth, but in the hearts of the women who remained. They gathered deep in the forest, their faces lit by torches, farmers' wives, widows, teenage girls, and even a few elder women joined, all tired of fear. We strike at dawn, Adaora said, her voice calm but sharp. We rescue Mama Uju and we end this silence for good. But how? One woman asked. The shrine is guarded. Adaora smiled darkly. We don't go through the shrine. By 3 a.m., the sisterhood had split into groups. One group snuck into the market and lit a fire at the council storehouse, triggering the guards to abandon their post. Another group, led by Ngozi, seeking redemption, slipped behind the sacred tree. Adaora, wrapped in red cloth, approached the shrine alone. Disguised as a priestess, she carried a calabash and whispered ancient chants her grandmother once taught her, chants that made the younger girls too nervous to question her. Inside the shrine, Mama Uju was barely conscious, her hands tied, her lips bruised, but when she saw Adaora, she smiled. You came. I always do, Adaora whispered, cutting her ropes. Suddenly, footsteps. Chief Okonkwo stood in the doorway, flanked by two loyal guards. I knew you would come, he said, but you are too late. He raised his staff. Then, a scream from outside. Flames leapt into the sky. A massive banner dropped from the roof of the council hall, painted in red dye. When women rise, chains fall. Okonkwo rushed outside to see the chaos. That's when Adaora struck. With a swift blow, she smashed his staff from behind and bound his legs with the very ropes used on Mama Uju. When he tried to shout, Ngozi emerged with the council's ledgers in hand. Let them hear what you did with the girls' education funds, she said. Let them see what's behind your sacred rules. As the crowd gathered, drawn by the fire, the noise, the giant banner, Zinachi limped into the square. She was alive, beaten, bruised, but not broken. A sympathetic palace guard had helped her escape once he saw how far things had gone. Her voice cracked as she shouted, Women of Umueke, your daughters deserve more than silence, more than shame. We deserve truth, and tonight we have it. She held up the ledgers, the notebook, the bruises. Chief Okonkwo tried to speak, to twist the story, but the women turned their backs on him, one by one. Even his guards stayed away. The council was dissolved by sunrise. Mama Uju, Adaora, Zinachi, and Ngozi stood at the shrine steps as the villagers stared in silence. You wanted to cage us, Adaora said, but we were born with wings. And with that, the cage was set on fire. Then just as peace began to settle, a quiet figure emerged from the crowd, an elder woman in royal beads. She removed her veil. It was the Queen Mother, long believed to be healed and powerless. She looked at the women and simply sighed. The morning after the revolt, the village of Umueke didn't feel the same. There were no drums of punishment, no morning chants for disobedient women. Instead, there were chairs placed in a circle under the Iroko tree, and for the first time in the village's history, women were invited to speak. Zinachi, still ailing, led the session. Mama Uju sat beside her like a proud general. Ngozi, now forgiven but scarred by her choices, confessed her betrayal publicly, not to seek pity, but to show other women that fear doesn't have to end in silence. Then Adaora stood up. She carried no paper, no banner, just her daughter in her arms. We don't rise because we are hungry, she said. We rise because we have no other choice. When our daughters cry and no one hears them, when we are told to kneel even when we are standing on broken ground, when the gods are used to chain us instead of free us, then yes, we rise. The Queen Mother nodded from the sidelines, eyes misty. She had kept quiet for decades, trod by tradition, but now the silence had cracked. Soon, other villages had their story. Some laughed, others feared, but in corners of the land, women began gathering near streams, under market stalls, in the backs of schools. The wind was shifting.